Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good evening, it's 5:30. This is Update for Tuesday, 22nd of August 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news here on the Isle of Man. Background to that news, we've got sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates. And the newsmakers in person this evening, the wettest July on record, and most of the crops are in though. Straightforward government contracts lack certainty, says a former Chief Minister. The My Chree could be replaced. 40% of flats fail fire inspections this spring, and Manx Care is operating a homeless accommodation service.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Faster Mai, Lewis Foster.
Faster Mai. Police are appealing for further witnesses to an assault in Douglas on Saturday night. 2 men were remanded at the Isle of Man prison today after being accused of stabbing another man who allegedly owed a £10,000 drug debt. New figures show unemployment on the Isle of Man increased by 17 people from June to July this year. 690 people were looking for work last month. The Department of Infrastructure says it's reviewing a request from the steam packet to replace the My Chree with the Arrow as the fleet's backup vessel. It wants to change an agreement to allow the Arrow to act as freight carrier when the Manxman is out of action, while Manannan takes on passenger duties. And a reminder, roads around the TT course are set to close in half an hour's time ahead of this evening's qualifying MGP qualifying session. Roads will reopen no later than 9 o'clock. In the international news, 2 children have been winched to safety from a cable car which is stranded hundreds of metres above a canyon in Pakistan, but 5 other youngsters and 1 adult are still stuck on board, with helicopters forced to suspend rescue efforts overnight. A judge has criticised police for looking after their own as he jailed a former Met officer for 16 years for a series of rapes. Adam Proven from Newmarket in Suffolk repeatedly attacked a colleague and a teenage girl. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with more at 6 o'clock.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Goromaya, thank you, Lewis, from the Ronaldsway Met Office. There's no wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea is slight. And this evening, dry with sunny intervals, a light to moderate wind coming in from the southwest. It'll be dry after dark too, the overnight minimum 14 degrees Celsius. And for Ukraine, dry and cloudy to start with tomorrow, then rain after lunch on a light to moderate westerly, backing southerly up to 19 Celsius. The wind's going to pick up after dark and we're down to 14 through the night. Into Chadane, sunny spells, possible isolated showers on Thursday. Coming in on a light to moderate westerly breeze, 17 degrees top temperature. Sunset's 26 minutes before 9 tonight. Tide's still on the way out. Low water's 10:05. High tide is at 3 minutes before 4 a.m. Sunrise 9 minutes after 6, and the morning low tide is at 16 minutes past 10.
Manx Glass and Glazing can produce bespoke splashbacks for your kitchen in any colours. Speak to the team on 674 573.
There was real concern for Manx cereal crops after the wettest July on record followed an exceptionally dry June. But now the majority of crops have been harvested. It said the situation could have proved a lot worse. David Brew is a cereal farmer in the north of the Isle of Man and chair of the Crops Committee of the Manx National Farmers Union.
It certainly reduced yields by quite a significant amount, I would say. But probably more than that, it's actually had a major impact on straw supplies here for the livestock sector. And of course that's been impacted as well by Laxiglow mills not requiring milling wheat this year, because that milling wheat acreage did supply a major part of the straw requirement from the livestock sector here. So you've had that, and then coupled with that really dry spell in June has basically meant that the straw yields from these crops have been much lower. So I think you will probably find there will be a shortage of straw for the livestock sector here on the island.
Which, of course, in turn means a more expensive winter, it would seem, for farmers.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it may well end up that as a consequence of these two things, that straw may have to even be imported onto the island for the livestock sector. So that it's one of these consequences as well, I think, that maybe people didn't initially foresee with the closure of Ramsey Bakery and then the resultant sort of a lower acreage of milling wheat being grown, and then that's had a consequence then on to the straw that's available, and then that will have a consequence then to the livestock sector. It's a consequence sort of a good, year, 18 months down the line, really.
Former Chief Minister, long-time Castletown MHK Tony Brown was on Man in Line today, and he says there appears to be a lack of certainty regarding straightforward contracts for redeveloping key infrastructure in the south of the Isle of Man. Mr Brown says the issue stretches beyond the much-delayed Castle Russian High School project.
I can't understand why there continues to be this delay, and also the uncertainty about are we or are we not going to replace the swimming pool? Well, of course we should. Why would you take away a regional facility like a swimming pool attached to a school, a secondary school? When I was a child, we didn't have swimming pools in that sense, so we didn't learn to swim. My son, when he was at school, learned to swim. My daughter did. They were taught at school how to swim. We have water all around us. They need to know how to deal with it. So I can't understand why there are so many delays on just getting on with the job of making a decision, putting the money in the budget, which you do over a period of time, and getting on with the development. At the end of the day, most of these borrowings are done through government using its own resources, the money that we've generated over years, and it's a good investment. What can be a greater investment than investing in our children?
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
Fastermeyer, thanks for dropping by tonight. 23 minutes before 6. After 25 years as the Isle of Man steam packet's flagship vessel, the motor ship My Chree could be replaced as the fleet's backup by the Arrow. The story from Lewis Foster.
In the latest director's report, the steam packet says it's hoping the DOI will agree to amend the sea services agreement for such a move to take place. Currently, it requires the company to keep the My Chree as backup until the agreement expires in 2045. Changing vessels, the company says, will prove the Arrow's economic worth. The company spent €9 million in November to purchase the vessel and avoid losing her from the fleet, following an offer from Caledonian Maritime Assets Limited, a subsidiary of the Scottish Government. The Arrow would act as freight carrier when the Manxman is out of action, while Manannan takes on passenger duties. The Department of Infrastructure says the Sea Services Agreement allows for variations to be suggested by either the department or the steam packet company themselves at certain times. The steam packet has approached the department with a variation request to remove the My Chree as the backup vessel and utilise the Arrow in its place. It goes on to say the department is currently reviewing the request internally and is in early discussions with the steam packet. Both parties remain committed to working together to find solutions that deliver the highest level of service and support to the people of the Isle of Man in the spirit of the Sea Services Agreement.
Almost 40%, 4 out of 10 flats on the Isle of Man inspected by the fire safety inspectors in the second quarter of this year failed their initial inspections. The Isle of Man Fire and Rescue Service wants to raise awareness of the dangers of poor fire safety in flats and remind landlords of the legal requirement to ensure the properties are safe. Divisional Officer, Head of Fire Safety at the Fire and Rescue Service is Carl Kinvig.
What we've had in the last 12 months now is a dedicated flat inspection team who are out proactively inspecting flats. So for a number of years we didn't have that, and standards maybe not surprisingly, have sort of dipped a little bit. So the fire officers that are going out carrying out those inspections are finding the same kind of problems over and over again. The range of what they're failing for does kind of vary quite a little bit, but there's certain things that seem to be a common theme. So, for example, when the officers go in to inspect the properties, very often all the doors don't close fully into their frames, which obviously in the event of a fire, that's not going to stop a fire getting onto the means of escape and allowing you to get out of the property. We always try and work with flat owners and people representing them to make sure we get the building compliant, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. That the interest here is public safety, to make sure that people are living in those flats are safe in the event of a fire. So initially what will happen is there'll be an inspection, and it really depends on the seriousness of what we come across, but 9 times out of 10 it will just be a list of requirements that ultimately the person will be given a period of time to correct, and then we go back in and hopefully re-inspect at that point. When you go in through the front door would be a fire door, and it would have an incandescent strip on it with a cold smoke seal. So that's the first thing as you go through that door. When you go through that door, you go into like a protected lobby, which means that you would have like a hallway, and all the doors within that hallway would have fire doors on them. In that lobby you'd have a smoke detector, and that smoke detector is not connected to the main fire alarm. It would just be independent in that flat, and then all the rooms from that lobby would be separated by fire doors with just incandescent strips in, not the cold smoke seals ones. And then one final thing you'd expect to see in the kitchen would be a heat detector, and that heat detector is linked through to the fire alarm system in the rest of the building. And then from a fire protection point of view, you'd expect to see a fire blanket in the kitchen as well.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Well, the ship Manxman, the motor vessel Manxman, departed Heysham at 3 minutes before 3. She'll be into Douglas gone 6:30. Onto the link span shortly afterwards. Departing this evening, 8:15 is My Chree heading to Heysham, and she'll be there just before midnight. Overnight departure from Heysham, the Ben heads to Douglas and back here tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. High-speed craft Manannan left Douglas at 3:15. She'll be in Liverpool. She's in the Mersey now. Will be on the link span in the next 10 minutes or so. Departing Liverpool this evening at 8:30, back to Douglas at 11:15. Tomorrow morning's departures, 6 a.m. Manannan, the fast craft, heads to Dublin. At 8:45, motor vessel Manxman heads to Heysham.
Like the Steam Packet on Facebook for the latest sailing information.
2 men from Douglas have been remanded at the Isle of Man prison after being accused of stabbing another man who allegedly owed a £10,000 drug debt. The story from Tessa Hawley.
Donovan Kitching of Clarence Terrace and Michael William Glover of Alder Road appeared at Douglas Courthouse today. Both have been charged with unlawfully and maliciously wounding the man with the intent to cause him grievous bodily harm on Saturday. The court heard police received a report at around 7 p.m. that a man had been stabbed on Cinder Path. The alleged victim had then sought refuge at a property on Ballacameen Road. He'd suffered 2 wounds, one to his hand, which required stitches, and one to the side of his head. Police later asked the public for help, requesting dashcam footage from anyone travelling along Peel Road between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. that evening. The prosecutor told the court that Mr. Kitching, who's 39 years old, had reportedly taken responsibility for collecting the debt owed by the man, adding this is clearly an escalation in collection methods. 30-year-old Mr. Glover, the prosecutor said, had allegedly lured the man to the meeting spot before he was attacked. Committal proceedings, where the case is elevated to the Court of General Jail Delivery, will take place on the 17th of October. Mr. Glover made no application for bail. Mr. Kitching's bail application was refused. Both men were remanded at the Isle of Man prison until their next court appearance on the 29th of August.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, in corporate news, Aberdeen-based engineering and consultancy company Wood Group rallied after it posted better-than-expected adjusted interim earnings driven by a stronger order book, and said annual profit will be ahead of forecast. Revenue rose 16% to $3 billion for the 6 months to June 30th, with adjusted core earnings up to 8.5% to $202 million. And for a full daily market report, go to Ramsey RamseyCrookall.com. Microsoft made a new bid to buy Call of Duty maker Activision Blizzard in the latest twist in the tale of what could be the biggest deal of its kind in the gaming industry. Its original $69 billion, that's £59 billion deal, was blocked by UK regulators. Microsoft say the new offer is substantially different and should be approved. The UK Competitions and Markets Authority will review the deal, but say it's not a green light. The offer, if approved, could end a tumultuous 18 months for Microsoft since it announced plans to buy Activision Blizzard in January last year. The proposed merger split regulators around the world, some of whom fear it will stifle choice for gamers. The UK CMA will make a decision on Microsoft's revised bid by the 18th of October. Without its approval, the deal just can't go ahead globally. Microsoft hope the merger will boost demand for its Xbox console and gaming subscription service. Under the new offer, Microsoft has agreed to transfer the rights to stream Activision games for 15 years from the cloud to Ubisoft, the video games publisher.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European stock markets higher after posting cautious gains to start the week. The US dollar edged higher against a basket of currencies. Oil steadied as investors remained downbeat on China's economic malaise. Gold gave early gains to hover near a 5-month low. And the numbers now from Ramsey Crookall reporting the close in London up 0.2% at 7,270. The DAX in Frankfurt up 0.2% at 15,705. A short time ago in New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial down 0.25% at 34,379. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index is up just over 0.33% at 13,546. The S&P 500 in Chicago up 0.04% at 4,402. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling is trading at $1 27.4 cents, €1 17.3 cents, and 23 South African rand 90.6 cents. In commodities, gold's up 0.25% at $1,898 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude's down 0.4% at $84.17.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
The current lack of a night shelter for homeless people in the Isle of Man means the health service is having to step in as a last resort. Health Minister Laurie Hooper MHK confirmed Manx Care operates a process for accessing emergency temporary accommodation such as short stays in hotels and bedsits. A story from Sian Cowper.
In response to a Tynwald question from Oncan MHK Rob Callister, Mr Hooper says there is no statutory obligation or responsibility on the Department of Health and Social Care or Manx Care to provide accommodation. But he adds that it is recognised that the lack of provision elsewhere makes the health service the provider of last resort. Mr Hooper's response confirms Manx Care will seek to help individuals at any time of year, and that the Adult Social Care Service works to provide additional support and signpost individuals to third sector organisations for housing support and other social-based assistance. Those requiring emergency accommodation, particularly out of hours, can contact Manx Care Adult Services Access Team on 686 179. The island has been without a night shelter for almost a year following the closure of Gry's overnight facility. Earlier this month, Government's Housing and Communities Board confirmed it would be publishing a draft strategy to tackle homelessness in September.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates. Manx Radio Sport.
Fast am I, Rob Pritchard.
Fast am I. Good evening. The second qualifying session of the 2023 Manx Grand Prix is scheduled to take place this evening. After the first practice was held on Sunday, yesterday's schedule was called off due to low-lying cloud over the mountain section of the Snaefell Mountain course. This evening, roads around the course are due to close at 6 p.m, with senior MGP and classic superbike machines heading out at 6:30. That'll be followed by the junior MGP, lightweight MGP and classic senior classes at 7:15. Roads are then due to open around the course no later than 9 p.m. Elsewhere, MGP organisers have announced there will now be 2 qualifying sessions tomorrow following the cancellation of Monday's programme. On Wednesday, an afternoon session will see roads around the course closed between 12:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. They'll then reopen for a short time before shutting again at 6 p.m. and reopening once more no later than 9 p.m. You can view the full MGP qualifying and race schedule as well as road closure details at motorsports.manxradio.com. In cycling, and Cycling Club Isle of Man says valuable lessons have been learned after a challenging debut on the British National Road Series at the weekend. The 4-strong Ireland team made its maiden appearance on the series at the Rydale Grass Creek Grand Prix on Sunday in the 4th round of the men's competition. Manx competitors Corin Leeming and Niall Quiggin were joined by experienced riders Nick Cooper and Cameron Jeffers for the 161.9km contest. On a tough day, all 4 were non-finishers, which included mechanical issues early on for Leeming as well as Cooper later in the race. The men's race was dominated by the Samparan squad, which secured all top 5 places come the finish, with under-23 rider Harry Birchall claiming top spot. And in football, FC Isle of Man will now live stream away fixtures for its supporters from this week. The club has announced live coverage of away matches will take place at the Pinewood Social Club in Pulrose. The first of those will be the Ravens' latest NWCFL Premier Division clash against Little and Remica, taking place tomorrow and kicking off at 8 p.m.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
One delay inbound this afternoon. Aer Lingus inbound from Dublin due in at 4 o'clock. Won't be in till 6:30. The 5 o'clock EasyJet from Liverpool came in a few minutes early. Next inbound, the 10 to 8 Loganair from London City. The 5 to 8 Loganair from Liverpool, all on time. And finally, the 8:15 EasyJet inbound from Gatwick is on time. Outbound tonight, the 5:30 EasyJet to Liverpool left 3 minutes early. Next, it's the 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool, and then the 8:45 EasyJet to Gatwick. On the roads, in Peel, East Quays closed between the House of Manannan and the road bridge for work on the roads and pavements. Hillside Avenue, Douglas closed for adjacent office window replacement till the middle of June next year. Annika Road and Cushing Road in Farm Hill are closed in phases for restructuring. You got temporary lights on Springfield Road in Pulrose for work on the pavements. The Doon Loop Road's closed in Glenmona for ditching work. Temporary lights on Harbour Road in Onken at the Fairway Junction for gas main replacement. Dreamskerry Road is closed between Jacks Lane and Dreamskerry Hill in Mackle for telegraph pole replacement. And temporary lights on Church Road, Port Erin near Southlands for gas main work. So the Mountain Road, the Mountain Course closes 6 o'clock tonight till no later than 9. And remember, out of hours, it's open two-way traffic through the MGP period. Cycling is prohibited on the Mountain Road until a week tomorrow evening. That's Wednesday the 30th. There are temporary speed limits in place around the course for the duration, as well as Ramsey to Laxey Coast Road, the Slock and Shoulder Road.
H&HMotorcycles.im for all your motorcycle requirements. Southgate Industrial Estate, opposite Quayside Tyres. Call 665646.
The Tynwald Commissioner for Administrations ruled against a Douglas resident's complaint about fortnightly bin collections because they were not able to show injustice or hardship. These were introduced last September by Douglas Council to encourage residents to recycle along with a garden waste collection service. More from our local democracy reporter Emma Draper.
The residents, referred to as Mr D and Mrs D in the report, claimed the council had failed in its obligation to provide information about the change and wanted Angela Main Thompson to cease the fortnightly bin collections. Mr D's complaints also stemmed from an issue with his neighbours and a pub nearby to where he lives, using a private company to empty the bins which are stored on a shared back lane on a section the brewery owns. In Ms Main Thompson's report, she says the pair were unaware of the council's long-established curbside recycling scheme and they felt services had been cut with no compensatory rate reduction. Mr and Mrs D also said the changes were introduced hurriedly and there was no consultation before it was implemented. Douglas Council weren't legally obliged to consult residents. Mr D said he wasn't on Facebook and Mrs D said despite having it, she wouldn't use it to look for council notifications. However, at the time of the report, Mr D did have a social media presence and was using it to publicise his views. Ms Main Thompson reported the council used other methods, including radio announcements, press articles and local events, to inform people of the change. The council also says environmental health is looking at vermin levels. Problems with the recycling boxes were raised by Ms Mayne Thompson to the council, who said it now stocks boxes with fixed lids, but these have less capacity than the shower caps, and recycling wheelie bins would increase the cost of segregating waste and risked cross-contamination. Ms Mayne Thompson concluded her report by refusing the complaint and saying there are hardcore individuals against recycling and alternative weekly collections.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
A Manx resident's calling for more to be done to make the Isle of Man accessible for people with disabilities, and he's come up with a simple solution which he believes will be beneficial for those who struggle with mobility. The man, who's asked to remain anonymous as he works for government, wants to create a map of all the places where there are dropped curbs.
If you're going to look at a disability network, drop curbs are kind of key to that, because we need to know where you can cross a road. If you get to the end of a road, can you cross onto the corresponding side? And it's a case of, where are these drop curbs? My dad had a stroke about 5 years ago. He's had to gone to a disability centre. You've got a disability centre which is about re-enabling people, and it's a case of where's the route from that disabled centre into town. If you're a residential home, it's a case of where's the drop curbs to get from that residential home to the closest chemist, to the post office. Before you plan a route, you need that information, because otherwise it's almost nigh impossible. I think Castletown have done, some of the Castletown commissioners have put an appeal out, and they're looking for drop curbs around Castletown and to identify it. The thing is, it needs to be an island-wide network, and that the key word is, when we're talking about a disability network, what we need to know where we're able to cross the road. It's that simple. It's you can collect all the other information, but without knowing how they all connect together. Curb could be an island that you're almost trapped on because you've got no way of getting off it. If we go back to Castletown collect the information about drop curbs in Castletown, but as a resident you're not interested in just Castletown, you're interested on where you're getting at the bus in Douglas and how it all connects together. Your journey doesn't start in Castletown. Your journey doesn't even start at the bus stop, it starts at getting to the bus stop, and if you can't identify how to get there, how to get to car park, how to get to the toilet, it's useless.
That's it for Update Tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Lewis Foster, producer Rhiann Evans. After the news at 6 o'clock, Simon and Kiri are here with the countryside. Ellie Miller's got the greatest hits at 6:30, the folk show with John Barker at 9, and Dave Moore with the late show after hours at 10 tonight.
WINT